Okay, here we're going to make a Z shape, and as you can take a look, this is going to start off with a little bit of a ground plane to help you with. Here's the ruler showing a third division, so dividing it equally in thirds, and here's the finished piece, kind of a checkerboard, or at least a quarter of a checkerboard. And then here's the actual drawing. So you have the left and right vanishing points, and you can kind of see how the Z shape is laid out there. We're actually just going to use the checkerboard divided so that it makes it easier to illustrate the piece. And we might add a piece to make the length of it, so just use that as the beginning part of it. So when you take a look at the smaller illustration, where it just may have a few boxes, you could draw this without the measurement, but the measurement just gives you a little more control. And in future drawings, you don't necessarily have to place that in there. So again, using Illustrator to make it a little easier to see how this is put together and constructed, there's the eye level or the horizon line with the ruler placed in there. And you can see that it's a number divisible by 3, so 6, even though this is just a ruler that's a little out of proportion, just to show the diagram a little easier. So once you have it, there's the two vanishing points, just putting them in the edge of the page. Left and right vanishing point, you have the eye level and the horizon line just indicated. Same term. And you're working on a flat picture plane, so two-dimensional surface. So just coming down at the bottom, giving you plenty of room so it makes a large rectangular shape. In this case, it's the illusion of a rectangle that we're trying to construct from. So just kind of going from the left point over to the right side of the line segment, left line segment over to the right vanishing point, and there you have this square type of shape that's in perspective, so it's not really a square. We'll try to do a diagram later. So crossing the diagonals to find the center, and that divides it into 4 equal spaces, even though, again, it's in perspective. And then taking a section so that it goes from the left vanishing point through that middle section and extending it to the right line segment. And that's dividing it in half. So before it was just in 4 triangles. So repeating that on the other side. And now you have 4 rectangular shapes. Actually, they're 4 square shapes. We'll divide that in there. So then all you need to do is to take a look. This is just the Illustrator file giving me that warning. So just dividing the other section helps me locate that midpoint. And all you need to do is wrap that around as long as it's directed through there. Just take your straight edge. Again, you can use a ruler or any straight piece of cardboard, whatever you happen to have at home. And that divides that piece. And it also divides the first line we made. And just passing it through there to the left line segment. So now you can see how all you need is one piece to find the rest of them. And kind of like the hidden line, so there's that section. And then the section from the left over is going to do the same thing and divide that. So, and there's ways to do it where it's a division that is in thirds. We'll do that on the other one, next one. But this one you can see, you can hopefully see all 4 corners of this and stretch that across. So here's the last one. So again, it's like a checkerboard or a quarter of a checkerboard. Checkerboard is 8 by 8, 64. This is 4 by 4 for 16. So all the math. So we'll just take these pieces out. Makes it a little easier to see. And now you have the flat floor plan of this. And if you can imagine, you can use any shape based off a rectangular piece, and it'll represent that entire construction, or at least that entire section. So here, just to show you the part in that geometry, just taking a rectangular tool and making a square, option, and putting a copy with the shift key. And it gives you at least the beginning part of this, so that'll set that part up. See if this shows you that section. Duplicating it, it's 4 across, and then taking that section, just changing the colors with the eyedrop tool, and duplicating it. And again, just to switch it, just to give you the checkerboard idea. You can rotate it, but it's probably just as easy. Many ways to do it. So here we'll just take the selection tool and the eyedrop tool and just click, click, click. Place that on there so it alternates it so you can get the illusion a little easier to see the checkerboard, and then just draw a selection and duplicate this across. And so now that's what this pattern of the squares looks like, flat. And if you take the line segment tool just to represent the diagonal, and this is just a way to prove the geometry like the theorems that they have. So there's the center and all the indicating center points for all the squares. Here's the Z shape at the end, what it looks like. Here again is the box that has there with the orange indicating the Z that we'll make. So you could always eliminate the back rows on both sides and just do a smaller one, but might as well illustrate this just to show the whole top piece. So to represent this, just going to use the pen tool. Go 1, 2, 3 back and just intersect it. The Smart Guides allows that to happen. So when you take a look at your shape, it's just making that box. This part, I could take the color off so it makes it a little easier. Hopefully it's kind of like searching where that piece is. Turn it off temporarily, and there you have the Z shape. Right, like so. And again, if you can look at this, it can go up, or it can be like a hole carved out, and it'll give you that shape. We'll just move this little flat floor plan up at the top, and whatever distance you have, that's going to extend it. That's exactly what this is. So we'll just take a line segment tool. Many ways to build it, but hopefully it won't get too confusing as you look at it, just raising the walls. And if you think of this like in a construction building, it's the same thing they do. They put the foundation, put the flooring, the joists, and then the floor, and then they start to raise the walls and put in the stud walls. We're just going to use a flat surface. We won't make all kinds of line pieces to it. But there's the front two walls, and each one has to go to the vanishing point. So right to left, left to right is really what happens. Find the center point to bring it up, and then just kind of work your way around is probably the easiest way to do it. These are all heavier lines, and eventually they'll be, just so you can see them on the drawing. And it kind of makes it a little bit confusing in the far back distance, but hopefully you can keep your wits about you and still see the sketch as it goes back. It has to hit on there. So sometimes when you draw it, you don't have to draw the line all the way back to the vanishing point, but you'll see what you like to do best and finish that off. So there's the back piece, and hopefully if it gets a little tighter in there, way in the back there. So there's the Z shape. We'll just change all of this to a selection. Let's see if we can do it here. I did it on 2 layers, so let's see if this will work. And just go ahead and take the thickness of this line down, and can also click on that guy there. I might have missed him there. And pretty much have it done. So there's again, the floor plan, the linear construction of perspective, and then anything beyond this is the shading. So it's trying to get you to use the 6-tone value scale, where you have the light source, so the highlight, the quarter tone, half tone, base tone, reflected light, showing the gradients, and then the cast shadow, which is also represented in the perspective as well. So here, just clicking on the line segments with the direct selection tool to tighten up all these. So in your case, you would just take a kneaded eraser and put those in there. And hopefully when you do these, you just use a sharp pencil, work relatively light so that you can see your illustration, and then go ahead and begin to illustrate that part. So the linear part, again, will get covered in the shading, so it's not too bad there. But again, just to give a nice cleaner look to it, it's just kind of placing that in there. So beneath it is the floor plan. Top of it is the light construction lines, and the heavier you make them, they call those object lines, so just the direct objects. So I'm trying to indicate that just by showing that piece. So there you have it. Hide the floor plan or the ground plane, and there's the actual illustration at the top. It makes it a little bit easier. So again, there's the finished illustration, And what we'll work towards now is just taking a look. So you could take the foreground line segments of this and just make them heavier. They can taper themselves. In this case, it's the shading part. So we'll just kind of go back to that, add another layer onto this just to make the drawing a little bit clearer, and slowly build that part up. See if we change the stroke. We'll give it a color this time. Just use a complementary color scheme here, blue and orange. So there's the orange lines, lock all these layers. So just kind of showing you a little bit in Illustrator. And keep in mind, Illustrator has a perspective grid that can be used, which we'll experiment with later. But I already have some of the gradients here using the water as the gradients, so just blue. Again, the pen tool is probably the easiest one to do. Scooch this up a bit so you can see the line segment there. And it fills the gradients, so anything on the left-hand side is going to be the darker values, not necessarily using a flat shape this time, just jumping right ahead to the gradients. So that's going to have the same shadowing type. So deselect it and select a medium gradient that has some of the medium values that you would find, and just use that as a guide. And again, not really using the shape builder, trying to match up, in this case with the computer, the exact shapes. And as you're shading this, just go from the gradients top to bottom, building in that light. So here, doing the same and just kind of staying at the top so that I can have the fill and still see the points, so it's not going to interrupt too much, so I can see exactly where I'm drawing, trying to plan ahead. Luckily it worked out, and there's the click on that corner point. So now I have three shapes, a little bit of tone, we'll edit those, but that gives you the selection of the Z solid part. Just like a building construction, you covered over with the plywood, the felt, siding, and all the trim. And now we'll go in with a little bit of a cast shadow. And keep in mind that the shadow, whatever the light source, kind of assuming this is outside, where the sun would represent that part, and since it's a flat surface that we're illusion, it's the idea that you're actually on the globe, so it's always a round surface, and it would radiate from that point that it intersects with the ground plane or the eye level. And so here it goes a little bit, but you have to represent the back wall, so we're just going to offset a little bit. That's going to go to the right vanishing point, and then way in the distance we can zoom into that, but at least just so you can see, this will just go right up there. Get the selection for the zoom tool, go all the way to the back, and just kind of estimate that. That's going to the left vanishing point, that goes to the right, clip off the edge in the corner, and that has the already the gradient that we're starting off with. So there you have it, and that's the section. And again, using the gradient editor and the on-screen annotator, you can modify the gradients with a little bit of the shading, rotating, all the scaling and everything that comes with it, because it's not bad as it is, but again, you want the intersection to show at the top there.